When a woman chooses herself over a man, there comes a sacred moment in a woman's life when she no longer waits to be chosen, begged to stay, or celebrated for her silence. She rises, not in defiance, but in divine clarity. She who once bent to fit into a man's shadow now stands in the full light of who God made her to be. This is not rebellion, it is resurrection. For far too long she has been taught that holiness is found in enduring what wounds her, and that love means losing herself. But no more. Today she lays down the chains of performance and picks up the mantle of purpose. She does not hate the man. She simply remembers the God, the one who formed her in the secret place, who wrote her name upon his palm, who called her daughter before any man called her his. When a woman chooses herself over a man, she does not walk away from love. She walks toward the only love that never fails. The one that began in heaven flows through her own soul and leads her into healing, wholeness, and holy boldness. The crown of divine identity before she is anything to anyone. A woman is everything to the one who created her. She is not defined by a last name, a ring, a role, or a reputation. She is crowned with divine identity from the moment she takes her first breath. And oh, how the world has tried to make her forget it. From cradle to grave, a woman is told that her worth is tethered to how well she fits into someone else's life, how well she serves, submits, supports, and sacrifices. But when a woman begins to awaken, not to rebellion, but to revelation, everything changes. She no longer bows to roles that crush her spirit or dances for approval that vanishes like morning mist. She remembers that before Adam ever laid eyes on Eve, God laid his hands on her soul. She was fashioned with purpose, knit together in wisdom, and anointed with strength. And when she begins to walk in the awareness of her divine identity, she is not becoming proud, she is becoming whole. The world may call it selfish, the church may mislabel it as pride, and some men may call it disobedience, but the heavens rejoice when a daughter remembers who she truly is. She is not a footnote in someone else's story. She is a narrative of grace all by herself. She is not an accessory to a man's mission. She is a fire, carrier of glory, bearer and a vessel of the Most High. Her crown is not made of gold, but of God's promises, placed on her head not by culture, but by the Creator. And when a woman chooses herself over a man, she is not rejecting love. She is rejecting the lie that her existence must revolve around someone else's ego. She is turning away not from affection, but from idolatry. For too long she has bowed at altars where she was never meant to kneel, silenced her voice so others could be louder, shrunk her dreams so others could feel taller. But now she rises, not with a clenched fist, but with an open hand, releasing everything that demanded she be less than the daughter of God she truly is. She is not bitter, she is better, because she has remembered the one who saw her before any man knew her name. And in that sacred memory she finds the strength to walk away, not just from relationships that broke her, but from systems that lied to her. For how can she continue to serve others while she is bleeding? How can she uplift when her own spirit is crushed beneath the weight of being everyone's support, but never her own? So she chooses, not out of spite, but out of spirit, not to escape responsibility, but to embrace resurrection. She lays down the false crown, the one made by the hands of men, built with guilt and maintained by fear, and takes up the real one, the one given to her by her heavenly Father. This crown does not slip when she cries, nor tarnish when she falls. It is secured in grace, fastened by mercy, and polished by truth. When she wears this crown, she walks differently. Her steps are no longer dictated by desperation, but by direction. Her words are not measured by how they make others feel, but by how faithfully they reflect her truth. She does not lower her voice to be liked, nor dims her fire to be kept. She knows now that her light is not a threat to the room. It is the reason the room can see. She knows now that choosing herself is not abandonment, it is alignment. And when she walks away from the arms of a man who loved her halfway, she walks into the embrace of a God who loves her wholly. This is not about man hating, it is about truth honoring. It is not a statement of gender, it is a declaration of freedom. For whom the Son sets free is free indeed. And when a woman remembers that her first identity was never wife, or girlfriend, or servant, or pleaser, but daughter, then she can finally stand with unshakable confidence, no longer performing, no longer begging, no longer waiting to be chosen, because she was chosen before the foundations of the world. She does not walk away because she is hard to love. She walks away because she finally knows what love truly is. And it does not bruise, it does not belittle, it does not break what God has built. So let the world talk, let religion criticize, let insecure hearts call it arrogance. A woman crowned by God needs no earthly approval to validate her steps. She walks in obedience to a call that is higher than comfort and deeper than human validation. She does not curse the man. She blesses him even as she leaves, but she blesses herself more. Because now, for the first time perhaps in many years, she sees herself not as an object of affection, but as an heir of glory. And when she sees that, truly sees it, nothing and no one can make her settle again. Her crown is secure, her head is high, her voice is strong, her walk is steady, and her soul finally is at peace, because she has chosen, not with arrogance but with anointed assurance, to return to herself, which is to say, she has returned to God. For in choosing herself, she has chosen the image of the one who made her, and that, dear listener, is the holiest choice a woman can make. The altar of self. Sacrifice must not consume the soul. There is a sacred difference between sacrifice and self-destruction, and too many women have not been taught where that line is drawn. For generations she was praised not for how alive she was, but for how much of herself she could bury under the weight of duty, silence, and suffering. The more she gave, the more godly they said she was. The more she endured, the more holy they called her. But what they failed to say, what the heavens have whispered all along, is that the altar of sacrifice was never meant to become a pyre where a woman's soul is consumed. Yes, love is sacrificial, but it is not suicidal. Yes, humility is noble, but it is not meant to erase her identity. She was never called to be a martyr in the name of a man's comfort. She was never designed to lose herself completely in order to keep someone else. Yet that is what many women have been taught to believe, that her holiness is proven by how quietly she suffers, how readily she surrenders her dreams, how quickly she apologizes for her needs. But when a woman begins to awaken to the sound of her soul, crying out beneath the weight of performance, that is the beginning of her resurrection. She realizes that the God who calls her to lay down her life also calls her to guard her heart. And when the altar demands everything, her peace, her voice, her safety, her essence, then it is no longer a holy altar, it is idolatry, because no man, no relationship, no label is worthy of a woman's total erasure. She may serve, but she must not vanish. She may help, but she must not be hollowed out. The world will try to make her feel guilty for saying enough. The voices around her may call her selfish, rebellious, dramatic. But deep within another voice speaks, still and strong. It says, "Daughter, I never asked for you to die for him. I already died for you." And in that moment of sacred confrontation, she begins to rise. Not with vengeance in her eyes, but with value in her bones. She begins to gather the scattered fragments of her soul, left behind in every apology she didn't owe, in every compromise that wounded her, in every tear she wiped away so no one else would feel uncomfortable. She begins to realize that being the strong one has cost her more than she can count, that bearing the burden for two has broken her back, and now Now she must stop pretending that carrying the cross means carrying a man who refuses to grow. She no longer confuses endurance with calling. She no longer thinks being quiet means being faithful. She has learned that God does not delight in her depletion. He does not cheer as she withers, and when she finally dares to say, "I can't do this any more," she is not stepping out of grace, she is stepping into truth. It is not disobedience to honor her limits. It is not betrayal to reclaim her peace. It is not sin to choose sanity over suffering. The altar that demands her whole self in exchange for crumbs of love is not of God. It is built by fear, cemented by shame, and lit by the matches of manipulation. So she puts out the fire. She steps back from the place where she once laid her soul down. And she learns slowly and surely that real love does not require the destruction of the beloved. Real love builds, nourishes, restores. It does not consume the soul, it celebrates it. She no longer glorifies pain. She no longer sees suffering as the highest badge of honor. She chooses healing not because it is easy, but because it is holy. She chooses rest not because she is lazy, but because she is beloved. She chooses herself not as a rejection of others, but as a return to the sacred image God placed in her when He said, "Let us make her in our image." That image is not meant to be burned at the stake of someone else's expectations. It is meant to shine, and so she shines, not to be seen, but because she finally sees herself. The woman who once poured endlessly into a cup that never poured back now chooses to drink from the well that never runs dry. She draws near to the presence that does not punish her for having boundaries. She sings again, not to entertain, but to heal. She speaks again, not to be agreed with, but to be heard. She breathes deeply, knowing that her breath matters, her needs matter, her life matters. She no longer fears the disapproval of men who only loved her when she was convenient. She no longer tries to earn a seat at tables where her value was never seen. She builds her own table now, with truth as its foundation and peace as its feast. And at this table there is no altar where she must die to be accepted. There is only life, abundant life, real life, life where she can both give and receive, where she can be strong and soft, powerful and gentle, righteous and real. She does not apologize for stepping off the altar. She gives thanks, because the moment she did, the flames went out, the fog lifted, and the voice she had not heard in years spoke again, saying, "You are mine, and I never asked you to burn for them. I called you to live for me." And so she lives, not as a shadow of who she used to be, but as a fireproof daughter of the King, whole and holy, no longer offering her soul to those who refused to value it. The altar did not consume her. It tried, but it failed, because grace caught her just in time, and now she walks away, not wounded but wiser, not shattered but shining, not empty but full, full of truth, full of life, full of the Spirit, full of herself, the sacred self God always saw even when she forgot. That, beloved, is the power of a woman who chooses to live instead of being slowly burned. The worth that walks away, there is a holy strength in the steps of a woman who chooses to walk away, not in rage, not in revenge, but in remembrance of who she is. Her worth is not in her ability to stay through the storm, but in her courage to walk when peace has packed its bags and truth has left the room. The world may see her departure as failure, but heaven calls it faith, because it takes a deeper kind of bravery to let go of something that once made her feel seen, loved, and chosen. But now she no longer confuses being needed with being valued, nor sees loyalty as a license for mistreatment. She has spent too many nights staring at ceilings, praying for strength to fix what only God can resurrect, and now she understands that some departures are deliverance in disguise. There is worth in the woman who walks, not because she is without flaw, but because she finally sees that staying in broken places is not her assignment. She knows now that love should not bruise, that companionship should not cost her soul, and that no man is worth the mutilation of her spirit. She once believed that endurance was her virtue, that bending until she nearly broke was proof of her devotion. But what she called strength was often silent suffering, and now the veil is torn. Now she sees that the one who promised to hold her heart was slowly hollowing it. She watched herself shrink to make others comfortable, diluted her dreams to preserve the illusion, and smiled through pain, because that's what they told her strong women do. But strong women also leave. Strong women also say, "This is not what I was created for." She does not leave because she is weak. She leaves because she has finally remembered her God, given worth. The same worth that was declared over her in the womb, the same worth that heaven never revoked, the same worth she forgot while trying to prove she was enough for someone who never saw her clearly. There is power in her leaving, not because departure is glamorous, but because it is sacred. It means she has stopped bartering with her soul. It means she has decided that her peace is a non-negotiable. It means she no longer needs to be someone's everything just to feel like she is something. And when she walks with the dignity of a woman who has tasted pain but refused to let it poison her. She walks with the grace of a daughter who finally believes her father's voice over the lies she has lived under. She walks with the steady resolve of someone who would rather face the wilderness than stay in Egypt. There will be whispers, of course, those who ask why she gave up, why she didn't try harder, why she couldn't just be content. But they never saw the tears behind her silence, the prayers behind her patience, the nights she begged God to change her so she could survive what was slowly killing her. She did not walk quickly. She did not run blindly. She lingered far longer than she should have, and yet even in that delay grace kept her. And now she walks, not with bitterness but with boundaries, not with spite but with sacred self-awareness. She carries no signs, no slogans, no need to be understood. Her walk is not a performance, it is a testimony. She has survived being unseen, unheard, unchosen, but never again. Because the moment she remembered her value, the moment she looked in the mirror and saw more than just his woman, or their expectation, she reclaimed a divine identity, and when you know who you are, you can't stay where dishonor lives. Her leaving is not an act of abandonment, it is an act of alignment. She is aligning her life with truth, with love that doesn't punish, with joy that doesn't hurt, with peace that isn't paid for with her silence. She is not leaving love, she is leaving the counterfeit. And as she walks, the ground behind her trembles, not because she wants it to, but because women like her, when they rise, when they choose themselves, shake the very foundations of systems built on their suppression. She carries no anger in her stride, only authority. She is not perfect, but she is present, fully, finally, fiercely present to herself, and in that presence there is power, power to heal, power to build again, power to say never again and mean it, power to raise the standard so high that anything less than true love will bounce off the gates of her discernment. She is not running from pain, she is running toward purpose. She is not escaping hardship, she is embracing holiness, because when a woman walks away in her worth, she is not just changing her life, she is changing the lives of those who watch her and silently whisper, "If she can do it, maybe I can too." She becomes a mirror, reflecting what it looks like to choose healing over history, truth over tradition, identity over image. And though the road ahead may be lonely, it will not be loveless, for the love that walks with her now is the kind that never leaves, never lies, never wounds. It is the love of the one who never asked her to earn his affection by disappearing into someone else's shadow. It is the love of the one who walks beside her now, whispering, "Well done, daughter, you remembered." And so she keeps walking, not because it is easy, but because it is eternal. Her walk is not an exit, it is an entrance into a life where her presence is not a burden, where her soul is not silenced, where her worth is not questioned. This is the worth that walks away, not to be free of love, but to finally walk in love that is worthy of her. The voice that heaven hears, there comes a time when the silence of a woman becomes too loud to ignore, not because she has lost her voice, but because she is finally ready to use it. For too long her voice has been offered on the altar of peacekeeping, swallowed to avoid conflict, restrained to preserve appearances, and buried beneath the weight of be humble, be quiet, be agreeable, and be small. But now the voice rises not with chaos but with clarity. It is the voice of a woman who has remembered who she is. She does not speak to be accepted. She speaks because silence has betrayed her long enough. She no longer waits for permission to say what is true. She no longer doubts the authority of the sound that comes from her own soul. This voice is not shrill, not frantic, not prideful. It is firm, rooted, ancient, and holy. And when she opens her mouth now, heaven hears her because heaven authored her. Every syllable wrapped in truth, every tone soaked in the fire of revelation, every sentence a sword of discernment. This is not the voice of rebellion. It is the voice of resurrection. The sound of a soul returning to itself after years of being told that love means silence and submission means surrendering her spirit. But now she knows. Submission to God never meant silence to man. It never meant being voiceless in her own life, invisible in her own story, or apologetic for having feelings, wisdom, and divine discernment. When a woman begins to speak, not from her wounds but from her healing, hell trembles and heaven leans in. Her voice becomes a weapon not against people, but against every lie that told her she had no right to feel, to choose to change, and as she speaks, something shifts in the atmosphere. Because her voice is not just her own, it is the echo of every silenced woman who came before her and the trumpet call for every woman yet to come. She speaks for the girl who was told to be quiet, for the wife who was told to submit and suffer, for the daughter who was told that her emotions made her unstable, for the mother who gave everything and still wasn't enough, and for the version of herself who once stood in the mirror, rehearsing truth but never releasing it. But now she releases it, not to be heard by men, but to be honored by heaven, because when her voice aligns with truth, it carries weight in the courts of the King. It becomes prophecy, intercession, declaration, and deliverance. She does not shout to be loud. She speaks to be free, and in that freedom others are loosed, because every time a woman speaks from the place of divine truth, she breaks chains, not just her own, but generational ones, chains of religious distortion that silenced her under the guise of reverence, chains of cultural bondage that taught her that a loud man is strong, but a loud woman is shameful, chains of emotional suppression that demanded her to choose between being respected or being real. But she is done choosing. She will be both. She will be whole. She will be heard, and her voice will no longer be filtered through fear. It will flow with fire, not destructive fire, but refining fire, a flame that lights the path for others who still whisper when they were born to roar. For now she knows, her voice is not a weapon unless wielded in anger, and hers is not angry. It is awake. Awake to the patterns, the lies, the manipulation masked as love. Awake to the truth that speaking up is not betrayal, but birth. And oh, what a birth it is! A birth of identity, a birth of dignity, a birth of boldness and balance, for when she speaks now, she is not defending herself. She is declaring herself. And there is a difference. She no longer needs to explain why she left, why she chose differently, why she could no longer shrink to fit into someone else's small expectations. Her voice no longer pleads for understanding. It proclaims understanding. She understands who she is, and what she can no longer tolerate. And in that understanding, her voice becomes not an argument but an answer to every internal prayer she whispered in the dark, an answer to the question, when will I matter? an answer to the ache, when will I be enough? Her voice says now, not because man says so, but because God always has. And now that she finally believes it, she will not be silenced again. Her voice now reads red flags, her voice now sets boundaries, her voice now refuses manipulation dressed in affection, her voice now names what is holy and what is harmful, and she does not tremble when she speaks. She is calm, not passive. Calm because peace is not the absence of her voice. Peace is the presence of her truth. The truth that she is not too much, not too sensitive, not too ambitious, not too emotional. She is exactly as God designed, a vessel of passion, perception, power, and prophecy, and when she speaks, her angels are activated, her authority is established, and her healing is multiplied, because it is not enough to know truth in silence. Truth must be spoken. And now that it is, she will never again trade her voice for belonging, never again bury her clarity to keep false peace, never again stay silent in rooms where her spirit weeps. She speaks, not to make noise, but to make history. She speaks, and strongholds break. She speaks, and light comes in. She speaks, and the heavens answer with a thunderous yes, because this voice that once stuttered in fear, now sings with fire, and this fire was not meant to be hidden. It was meant to burn through every lie, every limit, every label. This is the voice that heaven hears, not because it is loud, but because it is true, not because it pleases man, but because it pleases God. And when heaven hears that voice, born in pain, baptized in truth, raised in revelation, heaven responds, the angels stand, the chains fall, the story changes, and the woman, once quieted, becomes the sound of awakening. The voice of glory, the trumpet of freedom, the mouthpiece of God. The garden restored, there is a sacred story that began in a garden, where a woman once listened to the wrong voice, and the world changed because of it. But now we live in a time where the story is being rewritten, not with ink, but with identity, not with rebellion, but with restoration. Because every time a woman chooses herself in holy alignment with her Creator, a piece of Eden is restored. She steps back into the garden, not as the deceived, but as the discerned. She no longer eats the fruit of lies that say she is less, that she is made only for others, that her value is measured by how much she can endure in silence. Instead, she walks through the gates of awakening and picks the fruit of truth, of wholeness, of joy not purchased by pain. She has wandered through the deserts of emotional exile, she has lived beneath the trees of conditional love, and now she returns. Not to the man, not to the myth, but to the garden, to the presence of God, to the place where she was first imagined, crafted, kissed with breath, and crowned with purpose. This is not the woman they warned you about. This is the woman God always intended. No longer broken from the inside out, no longer molded by manipulation, no longer stitched together by the opinions of men, but fully herself, fully restored. She does not seek vengeance for what was taken. She seeks vision for what is coming. Because when a woman returns to herself, she is not looking backward in bitterness. She is reaching forward in boldness. The garden was never meant to be her prison. It was always meant to be her place of peace. And now she walks in it again, barefoot, brave, healed. The whispers that once told her she needed a man to name her are gone. God named her first. The shame that once covered her like fig leaves is gone. Grace has clothed her in righteousness. The blame that was heaped upon her by centuries of misunderstanding is gone. Truth has set her free. She does not walk in the shadow of Eve's mistake. She walks in the fullness of Christ's redemption. Her healing is not an accident, it is a fulfillment. She was always meant to return to this place, where she could look into the eyes of her own soul and say, I am enough. And not because she left a man, not because she proved a point, not because she hardened her heart, but because she returned to the place where she was first loved, first known, first seen. This garden is not geography, it is glory. It is the realm of peace within her, where chaos no longer gets the final word, where shame has no throne, and where her tears are turned into rain that waters her own roots. Here she does not fight for space. She is the garden. She does not beg to be chosen. She knows she was chosen before time, and in this holy return she remembers that even when the world turned its back, heaven never did. The angels never stopped watching over her. The Spirit never stopped groaning on her behalf. The Father never stopped calling her name through the wind, and now she hears it, clearly, fully, loudly. She no longer asks for confirmation from those who never understood her calling. She no longer seeks counsel from those who only loved her when she was silent. She listens to the sound of her own spirit communing with God, and in that place she receives what no man ever gave her, restoration. Her mind is renewed, her heart is reset, her body is re-honored, her voice is revived, and her presence becomes prophetic. She is no longer chasing healing through the hands of those who harmed her. She no longer trades her holiness for a fleeting taste of being held. She is held now, by grace, by truth, by the arms of the One who formed her in secret and promised never to forsake her. The garden is not a place she stumbled into, it is the place she fought to return to. Through the pain, through the silence, through the confusion and the chaos, through the years of wondering if choosing herself meant she was unlovable, but now she knows. Choosing herself was the holiest act of obedience, because in choosing herself she chose the image of God within her. In choosing herself she said yes to the divine design that was spoken over her before any man laid claim to her body or her time. In choosing herself she rejected the whispers of the serpent that said, "You must be more, do more, suffer more to be loved." She no longer eats from that tree. She eats now from the tree of life, rooted in her identity, flourishing with every yes she gives to herself. And the fruit of that tree is peace, wisdom, strength, and clarity. She no longer wonders if she is too much. She no longer dims her light. She no longer carries the guilt of walking away from what could not carry her. Instead, she walks among the lilies, talks with God in the cool of the day, and knows, truly knows, that she is safe here, that she belongs here, that the garden was never lost. It was only hidden beneath the rubble of expectations, religion, fear, and silence. And now that she has cleared it away with her tears and her truth, she sees it again. She sees herself again, not as the woman who failed, but as the woman who returned. And when she returns, all of heaven rejoices, because the garden is restored, not just for her, but through her. Every step she takes back into her own soul creates space for other women to do the same. Her return becomes their roadmap. Her restoration becomes their revival. She was never just healing for herself. She was healing for a generation, and now she stands not alone, but surrounded by the cloud of witnesses who nod from heaven and whisper, "This is what we prayed for. This is what we longed to see. A woman unbroken, a woman unashamed, a woman fully herself, fully alive, fully returned. This is the garden restored, and she is the living proof."